Hello, welcome to Prajim Technologies. This is Venkat. This is part 3, Built-in Types in C Sharp. In this session, we will learn about different built-in types that are available in C Sharp, escape sequences in C Sharp, and verbatim literal. So first, let's look at the different types in C Sharp, and all these are built-in data types. So the first data type that we will talk about is the Boolean data type. For example, in your application, if there is a need to store a value, of true or false, then we make use of Boolean data type. For example, if there is a question, are you a major, true or false? Okay. So if you want to store values like this, we make use of Boolean data type. Now, to create a Boolean variable, we use the bool keyword, and maybe you give it a name b equals true. Okay, so this Boolean data type can only hold true or false. If you try to assign any other value to this variable apart from true or false, then you will get a compiler error because b is a variable of type Boolean which can hold only true or false. So for example, if I try to assign an integer to that, a number to that, immediately we'll get an error. Look at that red squiggly line, and it shows, obviously constant value 1 to 3 cannot be converted to Boolean. So that's an error. Okay, so but whereas if you look at C or C++, a Boolean data type usually contains 0 or any other number. 0 means false and any other number means true. But in C Sharp, strictly a Boolean variable can hold either true or false. The next data type that we talk about are the integral data types that are available in C Sharp. Now, there are several integral data types as shown in the slide, byte, short, integer, long, etc. Now, all these data types are capable of holding some number. Okay, if you look at byte, it's a single byte, which means 8 bits. Okay, and 8 bits can hold, 1 byte, a variable of type byte can hold a number between 0 and 255. Okay, so which means 0 to 255 are 256 different values. Okay, actually, if you look at how these sizes are calculated, there is a formula behind that. For example, 1 bit, okay, can represent two different values, either 0 or 1, and 8 bits together, they can represent 2 to the power of 8 distinct values. 2 to the power of 8 is 256, and 0, from starting from 0 to 255, is 256 values. So a single byte can hold 0 to 255. So for byte, there is another counterpart, S byte, S standing for signed, meaning it can hold negative values as well. Minus 128 to 127. So minus 128 to, minus 128 to 0 or 128, and 0 to 157 is 128. So 128 plus 128 again, 256. So if it's a signed byte, minus 128 to 127, byte is 0 to 255. Similarly, for short, integer, long, all of them have their counterparts unsigned, unsigned. Okay, so an integer can hold both negative and positive values, whereas an unsigned can only have positive values. It's not signed. There's no plus or minus. It's only positive values. Okay, now, so what's the difference between these different data types? They are from smallest to biggest. For example, byte is 1 byte. Integer is 32 bits. 32 bits is 4 bytes, whereas long is 64 bits. Okay, which is 8 bytes. So in your application, for example, if you're storing the age of a person, most likely couldn't be more than 130, or maximum is 110, 20. Okay, so age of the person is relatively small number. So to store something like that, probably byte is more than enough. Okay, but whereas if you're storing the population of a country, then probably in that case you may choose integer data type because that's a little bigger number, and population of a country is always a positive number, so probably you want to use unsigned integer. Or if it's much bigger, then probably you can go for long. Okay, so depending on the requirement of your application, you can choose the type that is appropriate. Okay, now, is it mandatory to remember all these ranges? I don't think it's practical. Okay, even if you forget the range, even if you don't have MSDN accessible, using Visual Studio you can calculate what is the biggest and smallest number that variable of that type can hold. For example, if I have an integer variable of type I want to find out what is the minimum value that it can store and what is the maximum value that it can store. It's very easy to figure out because this integer type has a property. Again, we will be talking about properties later in detail. So this integer type, so int dot, it has a property called min value. And if you look at the property, this will represent the smallest possible value. This will show what's the smallest possible value that any variable of type integer can hold. So maybe if you want the minimum value, you can just say console.writeLine, maybe something like this, min equals whatever. So now if we go ahead and run this, obviously it will show what's the minimum value, and if you compare this with what's there in MSDN, it is exactly similar. Okay, so that's how you can compute the minimum and maximum. Similarly, if you want the maximum value, it's pretty simple. Use the other property, which is maybe max value. And you want to rename this to give it a meaningful name. So you run that, minimum is that, and maximum is that. All right, so those are the different integral data types available in C#. The next data type that we'll talk about is the floating data type. Float, integral data types, they basically can hold a whole number. If you want, a decimal precision, then that's not available in these integral data types. So if you want, to store some precision values, then you can choose this floating types. In floating point types, we have float and double, and they are much bigger as well. If you look at the float data type, it is basically 32-bit and the double is 64-bit. So they can hold relatively big numbers. And if you look at the precision, they are like 7 digits, after decimal, together with the decimal and, you know, the integral part, they can be 7 digits, whereas this one is 15 to 16 digits. So that's about float. I mean, basically, if you want precision value, then we can make use of that. For example, double D equals maybe 1, 2, 3, some decimal places I want, and I can do that. And if you just print that number, so but whereas if you do that with a variable of type integer, it won't be able to hold that decimal part there. So for example, if I make this integer in the I, obviously you get straight away an error. Look at this, cannot implicitly convert type double into int. Again, in a later module, we will talk about implicit and explicit conversions. All right, so that's double. Similarly, if you want float, if you want a lesser precision, then probably you can go for float. And the next data type that we have is a decimal data type. Now, decimal data type has much bigger precision. Okay, it has a 29 to 28 to 29 significant digits, and the data type is really huge, 128-bit data type. And similarly, if you want to store any decimal value, you can do so. The type of that is decimal d equals whatever is the decimal value that you want to store. So these are different data types that are available in C Sharp. Depending on the requirement of your application, you choose the data type that is most appropriate. All right. Um, we will talk about the string data type, escape sequences, and verbatim literal in our next video in part 4. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. Hello, welcome to Prajim Technologies. I'm Venkat. This is part 4, built-in string type in C Sharp. In part 3, we have seen the other built-in data types like Boolean, integral, floating types, and decimal data type. Okay, in this session we'll be looking at string types. From part 1 we have already seen, we have already been working with strings. For example, we have printed a string welcome to C Sharp training, and we also have accepted some input from the user and then concatenated that with the hello word and output to the screen. So in this session we will see, string type and various things that we need to keep in mind when working with strings. Okay, escape sequences, verbatim literals, etc. All right, let's get into the demo. Okay, so in C Sharp, a string is basically enclosed within double quotes. So double quotes basically have a special meaning, in C Sharp. They are used to indicate the beginning and end of a string. For example, if I have to store the name of a person, then probably I will have to use a string variable name equals whatever is the name of the person. For example, let's say Prajim. So now this double quote here indicates the beginning of the string. This double quote indicates the end of the string. Now, if I want to print the string, I can do console.writeLine and the name of the person. So what is this going to do? It's going to print that string. So if I go ahead and run that, so it prints that screen. Now let's say I want this name. Okay, now when I run this program, look at that word Prajim. It's not within quotes. For example, I want the word Prajim, even the double quotes to be printed. How do I do that? If I put another double quote here, look at this. This indicates the beginning and end of a string. So this is like, what is this Prajim? It's outside of double quotes now. So that's why double quotes has a special meaning. If you want to output double quote, in the sense if you want to print the double quote itself, then there is a separate way to do that using something called escape sequence. In C Sharp, the escape sequence character is backslash. For example, in this particular example, double quote has a special meaning, but I want the double quote to be treated as any other printable character. And to do that, we make use of this escape sequence character, which in C Sharp is backslash. Okay, so if I want to print double quote, what I need to do is I need to prepend that with a backslash. And the moment I do that, look at that, that red squiggly is gone. Now this backslash tells to the C Sharp compiler, okay, whatever precedes me, treat that as a regular printable character, even if it has got special meaning C Sharp compiler. Okay, so escape sequence, there are some characters that have special meaning within C Sharp. In that case, we can use these escape sequences to treat them as normal printable characters. Similarly, there are some non-printable characters. For example, a line feed or a carriage written. Okay, so if you want to print or if you want to specify those non-printable characters within a string, again, you make use of escape sequences. Okay, let's complete this example first. I want the Prajim word to be within double quotes. So what I can do, I can escape the double quote with a backslash. And now if I go ahead and run this program, look at that. Prajim is, surrounded by double quotes as expected. So there are different, escape sequence characters within C Sharp. And if you want to have a look at them, look at MSD and article, there are different escape sequence characters. For example, if I want a string within single quotation mark, then I would say backslash single quote. Or if I want a new line character after every word that I print, then I use backslash n. Let's do an example with this new line character so that you understand that better. So for example, I want to print 1, 2, 3 in 3 different lines. Okay, now to do that, I can make use of this backslash n, because if you look at this one, backslash n is the new line character. So what am I doing here? I have this string. So instead of wasting time in typing, I have already copy pasted that. So 1 backslash n is a new line character. So it comes to the next line. 2 and new line. 3 a new line. So if I go ahead and run this program now, 1, 2, and 3 will be coming in their own lines. So though they are in the same line here, backslash n has a special meaning, which means it's a new line character. It won't be printed backslash n. Instead, a new line character will be printed. That's why 2 comes in the second line, 3 comes in the third line. Okay. So those are the different escape sequences. You have this chart on MSD and escape. If you type in escape sequences in C#, you'll get that as the first article. So depending on your requirement, you can use this chart and use that escape sequence. Okay, for example, if you want to output backslash itself, you can escape that with another backslash, because again, backslash has a specific meaning. It is used as escape sequence character. But if there is a requirement in your application where you want to print backslash itself, then you escape that with another backslash. Okay, so for example, if I want to print a valid Windows path, then probably I can make use of this one. So okay, so I want to print, I have within C drive regime .NET folder. Within that .NET folder, I have training folder and C# folder. Now, if I want to print that, look at that. Though I have double backslashes here, in the output I get only single backslash, because C# compiler knows backslash backslash means it's just an escape sequence character to print a backslash. Okay, but however, if a non-programmer, for example, looks at this code, it's not that readable. This doesn't look like a valid Windows path. It's like 4 5 folders here. So it's okay. But if there are, let's say, I'm 10 or 20 directories deep, then I have to duplicate all these backslashes. So in order to overcome that, in C#, we have something called verbatim literal. Okay, so what's verbatim literal? Let's look at an example and then we'll come back and look at the definition of that. Okay, now if you look at this particular string, this doesn't look right. This doesn't look as a valid Windows path. It's not very much readable. Okay, to make it more readable, what you can do is put an @ symbol in front of that string, and the moment you do that, the only change that we have done is put this @ symbol here. Now if I go ahead and run this program, let's close all the other windows. You look at this, now it outputs, backslash backslash, double backslashes. Now, what you understood by this, when you put an @ symbol in front of a string that's enclosed within double quotes, all the escape sequences within that string are no longer treated as escape sequences. Instead, they are treated as regular printable characters. Okay, so if you want to treat escape sequences as regular printable characters, then you can make use of verbatim literal. Okay, so when do you actually use these verbatim literals? For example, this is a very good example because if you want your program to be more readable, if you want a valid Windows path look like a valid Windows path, then make use of verbatim literals. Now if you can actually go ahead and remove that extra backslash there, and it looks much readable. So if we go ahead and run this now, look at this. The program is much readable now. Okay, so that's verbatim literal. So in this session, we have seen the string type. You basically enclose the string type in double quotes, and there are certain, you know, special characters which have special meaning with C# compiler, like single quote, double quotes, etc. Now, if you want to treat them as regular printable characters, then we make use of escape sequences. In C#, the escape sequence character is backslash. Okay, so if you want to print a double quote, you would say backslash double quote. If you want to print a single quote, backslash single quote. If you want to print a backslash itself, then you escape that with another backslash. Okay, so escape sequences are basically used to print, characters that have special meaning. Also, some non-printable characters like a new line feed, carriage return, etc. And we also have seen something called verbatim literal. Now, what's verbatim literal? Verbatim literal is a string with an at symbol prefix, as in this example, you can see it in the slide, at hello. Now, verbatim literals, as we have seen in the example, they make escape sequences translate as normal printable characters to enhance readability. For example, we have seen the example of a valid Windows path. And this is a practical example, which of course we have just seen now. You know, this string is not readable, whereas this is better readable. This looks like a valid Windows path. That's it. Thanks for listening. And for additional resources, as always, you can check prejimtech.com. And for ASP.NET C# interview questions, you can refer to these resources. Thank you and have a good day.